Hello everybody, welcome to the Museum of American Speed here in Lincoln, Nebraska. My name's Tim, I'm the curator of the museum, and today's a really special day. I'm here with one of my all-time heroes, probably because I've known his name before I met the man. I had a Simpson helmet when I started drag racing. I'm here with Bill Simpson, and he flew in today to bring some of his friends from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Museum to see our museum here in Lincoln. So it's been a real honor walking around with him, hearing stories about his relationship with Bill Smith and some of the wonderful items, some of which are surrounding us, like his fire suit behind me we'll talk about in just a minute. But I have him here with his dog Maya, and it's just been a real treat. Bill, thanks so much for coming. Really appreciate you being here.
My pleasure. You know, it's always a great thing to come to this museum. I enjoy it very much. The only problem you have is it takes 3 days to go through it.
Well, you've been a huge advocate for our museum, and before I even came to work at the museum, I heard about you and how you spread the good word about what we're trying to do here and trying to, tell the history of American speed, through drag racing, dirt track racing, Indy racing. So I got to thank you for that. You've been a great friend to us.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Before you were a friend to us, you were a friend, of course, to Speedy Bill, and he's, obviously our hero. Tell me a little bit about how your relationship with Speedy Bill started back in the 50s.
My relationship started with Bill when, I don't know if you realize it or not, but I'm instrumental in the parachutes on drag racing cars. And I got a phone call one day, and I was working on my dragster on one side of my garage, and I learned how to sew, and I was making parachutes on the other side. And I got a phone call, and it was Bill Smith, and he said, "Is this Bill Simpson?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Are you the guy making parachutes to stop them cars?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You gonna sell them?" And I said, "Yeah." "How much money you want for them?" I said, "About $30 a piece." $30. He said, "I want to have 3 of them. I want to buy 3. I said, "What are you going to do with 3 of them?" And he says, "Well, I got a speed shop out here in Lincoln, Nebraska." I said, "Okay, I'll sell you 3 of them. It's $90. How am I going to get paid?" And he says, "We'll send you a check." And I said, "Okay, cool. Now how do I get them to you?" This is 1957, before UPS or any of that.
Oh, yeah.
He says, "Just go down to the Greyhound store and mark it Speedway Motors, Lincoln, Nebraska. It'll get here."
Oh, wow.
And it did, and he sent me a check, and that started a relationship that lasted until he passed.
Wow, that's really great. And you were good friends with Joyce, of course.
Yes.
A little bit about, I wonder, as far as parachutes go, that's a pretty interesting story. How'd you get involved in drag racing originally, and why did you set out to make parachutes?
I got involved in drag racing when I was 15 and had a learner's permit.
Wow.
And somebody told me about the drag races at Santa Ana. And I went down there. I didn't have a driver's license. I just had a learner's permit. And I thought, well, I like this. And the next weekend I went back and I paid my entry fee, which is $1 or something like that. And C.J. Pappy Hart was running that drag strip. And he said, "You can't run that car." And I said, "How come?" He said, "Because it's a convertible." And I said, "Well, what I got to do?" He says, "You got to wear a helmet and goggles." And I said, "Well, I don't have a helmet and goggles." He said, "Well, I'll rent you a helmet and goggles for $0.25. and I rented the helmet and goggles, made a run. I run about 68 miles an hour in about 20 seconds or something. Got out of the car. I was like a hero, right, to myself. And that's how I got involved in drag racing. Well, a couple of years later, I was with a kid named Mike Sorokin, who was ultimately killed in the surfers drag. He wasn't in the surfers when he got killed, but he got killed in a drag racing accident. But anyway, we'd take turns who was driving that weekend. And it was my weekend to drive. We're at San Fernando drag strip, and I went off the end and had a pretty severe crash. And I said, I'm not going to do that again. So we had to build a new car. I went to a war surplus place, and I bought a great big parachute that they dropped like tanks.
Oh, wow.
A cargo chute. And so we put that on the back of our tow car. There's a street in Redondo Beach, California. It's called 190th Street. It goes down about 3/8 of a mile, and then it straightens out and goes to Pacific Coast Highway. Well, we're going down that hill doing maybe 80, 90 miles an hour. Mike was driving, and I was in the back, and I threw this parachute out. Well, it was a 44-foot canopy.
Oh, jeez.
picked the back of the car up, and the wind was blowing across the road. It blew us off into a farmer's nursery where he's growing trees and stuff. We knocked a whole bunch of stuff down, killed our car. Dirt stuck up our nose, but neither one of us got hurt, you know. But that started the whole thing, and I ended up going back telling my story to the guy that owned the surplus place, and he says, well, you need a 10-foot parachute. And I said, you got something like that? Yeah. And so he didn't give it to me, but I bought a parachute for $8 or $9.
Wow.
And I went and got a parachute manual, a rigger's manual, and learned how to sew, rented a sewing machine, and started making parachutes.
That's cool. There's a great old photograph I saw, I think just last night, of you sewing parachutes. It said, the caption read that it was in your mom's garage. Is that true?
No, I was in my garage.
In your own garage?
Yeah.
How many sewing machines did you have going at once? Was it just you?
At that time, it was just me.
Wow.
And then I had hired a lady and her sister, and then there was 3 of us. And it went from 3 to 7, I don't know, some number like that. And then I had to get out of the garage because we couldn't I could do one or the other in the garage, but I couldn't have a race car in there and have the parachute company in there. But that's how the whole thing started.
That's cool.
Who would have known what it was going to get to?
Yeah, I mean, holy cow, all the video you see of all the drag cars running parachutes, and that was all because of what you had started. Do you remember what the car was that you launched that parachute out of that crashed in the farmer field?
Yeah, it was a Woody car.
Oh, really?
Woody Gilmore.
Oh, wow.
He was in Signal Hill, California, and it ended up not being a car at all because, when I crashed it, those cars in those days were made out of muffler molly.
Yeah, that's right.
And they fall apart. We crashed, but we built another car, so.
And you survived. That's a good thing. You and I were comparing notes on 40 Fords. I was just telling you how excited I am to have an old barn find 40 Ford, and you were telling me that one of your first cars, was it your first car?
It wasn't one of my first cars. It was my first car.
Oh, man, get out of town.
It was a 40 Ford Deluxe convertible, and I paid $100 for it.
Oh, boy.
And that was the car I took to Santa Ana to race.
Wow. That's cool. How long did you have that car? Do you remember? In those days, you probably changed them like socks.
Well, I don't know that you changed them like socks, but I didn't have it very long, maybe 3 or 4 months, something like that.
Oh, that's cool. Do you remember doing anything to the engine, or did you just run it stock?
No, it was just stock. I didn't have time doing all the stuff that I was doing. I probably had time to make it a hot rod. I just didn't want to for whatever reason.
Yeah, it had a lot going on. Yeah. So you were friends with Bill his whole life. Do you have any memorable stories of your time hanging out with Bill other than the one when you first talked to each other?
Well, every time I was with him was a memorable time.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't pick out any in particular other than when we'd come to the Speedway, and this is later, of course, back in the 60s and 70s. And on rainy days, myself and John Butera, Wayne Leary, who was Bobby Unser's chief mechanic, and myself would sit and play cards in my suite, and he would have a steady stream of people coming in to see Bill Smith. Not the other 3, but he always had something to say.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know we miss him all the time around here. We have a lot of recordings of him walking around the museum talking about some of the things that we have on display. Luckily, some of the things we have on display are directly related to you. We have some really wonderful artifacts here that you've helped us with.
Well, I mean, I look around through here and I see a whole lot of stuff that I saw when it was actually in the field. Mm-hmm. And it brings back old memories, and of course that's the past. We don't look to the past anymore. We look to the future.
Yeah.
But it's always nice to see some of these things that have been preserved.
Yeah, I remember you saying earlier today that you're not a sentimental person. So when you have something old, you're like you've helped us out with the Sonny Rossi. We have this wonderful fire suit for Sonny Rossi, who is a little person, but a very successful, very interesting guy in that he raced all kinds of stuff, drag raced, and then also on the salt flats. But we have a suit that belonged to him, and it was the second custom suit that you'd ever made.
It was the second fire suit I ever made.
Oh, wow.
Not custom. Well, I mean, it was custom.
Everything was custom back then?
Yeah, because you didn't go to the store and buy anything. But yeah, he called me one time and said that he had that old fire suit, and I said, what are you going to do with it? And he said, would you like to have it? And I said, yes, I would.
Yeah.
So he sent it to me, and we mounted it on a board with all his pictures and what have you. And I don't know, I was cleaning out all my memorabilia stuff, and I told Smith that I had that, and I wanted to send it all to you guys. which I did. I sent you all my stuff, not all of it, but a good portion of my memorabilia, because I'm not sentimental at all.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I still have a whole room full of photographs and articles and stuff like that. And I suppose it'll end up coming here at some point.
Wow. Yeah. Of all the years you were involved with racing and safety, what's one of your most memorable experiences? You've worked with all the greats. I mean, I think about some of the people, Don Garlitz, and the people at Indy. Do you have one that really sticks out in your mind as kind of a dynamite moment where everything kind of came together?
For my business?
Yeah, that, or even personally, like friendships and things of that sort.
Well, I mean, I've made thousands of friends in motorsports. And I mean, as far as me, the most satisfaction I ever got was when I took Rick Mears off of a backhoe and put him in one of my race cars. And I actually raced against Rick Mears and realized that kid had a serious amount of talent.
Yeah.
And I remember Roger Penske calling me after the California 500. And I think Rick had finished 7th and I finished 9th. And he was in my car that I owned, and I was in another guy's car that, I don't remember who it was Watson's or Clint Brown or one of those guys. But anyway, I told Rick, I went to USAC and I said I was going to drive Joe Hunt's car. Joe Hunt passed away, and his wife refused to allow the car to be run. So I'm standing out there with my helmet, and there's my car, and Clint Bronner says, "Would you drive my car?" That's whose car I was driving, was Bronner's. And I said, "Yeah, I'd be happy to drive that thing, sure." Yeah. So anyway, I went to USAC and I said, "I've got an entry here with my car, my Eagle, and I want to put Rick Mears in it." "Who's Rick Mears?" I said, "He's going to be quite a race driver." Mm-hmm. So anyway, I said, I'll vouch for the kid's ability, that he won't crash into nothing and he won't do anything that's untoward. So they let Rick run, and I remember telling Rick before the start of the race, I said, "Whatever you do, man, if I come up to lap you, I'm going to make eye contact with your mirror. I don't want you looking at me, because you put my car into the fence if you do that." That's a period when we were running in the 190 mile an hour bracket at all those speedways. So we raced, and I come up on Rick, and I two-lap him actually, and he's looking right at me, and I'm thinking, this is the end. He's going to crash. He goes out into the marbles. Well, he saved it.
Oh man!
And that car that I was driving was a very, very, very fast car. It broke, and I was in the pits for 2 laps, and I still finished 9th with it. So it tells you it was a pretty good car. So, but anyway, the race is over with, and I get a phone call from Roger Penske, and he says, "Hey," he says, "Simpson, who is that kid driving your car?" I said, "His name's Rick Mears." He said, "I kind of been poking around. You got a lifetime contract with him?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And that's when they were selling Formula One drivers contracts back and forth.
Oh, wow.
He said, "How much money you want for his contract?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to ask you something, Roger. If I tell you I'll just give you the contract if you put him in a real car, will you put him in a real car and not make him be just a test driver?"
Yeah.
He goes, "Yeah, I promise." I said, "Okay."
Wow.
I'm going to tear the contract up and throw it in the trash, which I did.
Wow.
And then I told Roger, I said, "The kid's going to win the Indy 500 for you." Well, damned if he didn't the next May.
How cool is that?
So
wow.
We didn't know he was going to go win 3 more.
You said you pulled him out of a backhoe? He was running a backhoe when you met him?
I was developing a car for an Argentinian guy named Berta, B-E-R-T-A. And I was tired of driving up at Willow Springs. I mean, it's like I had my business to run and I had other stuff to do. Then I was spending 8 hours a day up there test driving this car with his engineers. And I was tired. I just called Rick and said, "Do you want to do some test driving?" Yeah. He says, "Get your ass over here to Willow Springs, and I got a car for you." When he came over there and got in the car, got him settled in, I went back down to LA and went back to work, and he stayed up there for another couple of weeks.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting story, and it was good for me. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stories. When Johnny Rutherford crashed at Phoenix, and I thought he was dead. Chip Ganassi crashed at Michigan when he ran over Little Al and landed upside down on the guardrail, and I reckoned that he was dead, but both of them were okay. So, I've made some lifetime friendships. with things like that.
You know, it's amazing. You talk to a lot of people that have been in the industry, in the hobby for a long time, and they'll tell you about all the changes they've seen. And when I think about safety equipment, you know, you can talk to people that have seen the changes. You've been instrumental in making those changes. And
Yeah. I have made those changes, actually.
yeah, that's cool.
I know that. I mean, that feels good, but that's not the highlight of my life, you know. That's my profession.
Yeah.
I made a living doing that.
You see the T-shirts people like to wear. Remember when racing was dangerous? And you know, racing still is dangerous, obviously, but it's amazing how far things have come.
It's come a long ways.
It's hard to imagine you were the guy that had to bum a helmet to go racing, and then you're the guy that made all the helmets. So that's pretty cool history in my opinion.
Well, we made quite a few, that's for sure. You know, and I know that Jason Smith was saying he wanted me to talk about this fire suit thing. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
When I lit myself on fire, that was kind of an interesting day. That we had a guy come to the Speedway, and if you came to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and you talked about someone, it would come back to whoever you talked about within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We were a small family, and if an outsider came in and rubbished you, for example, you'd know about it momentarily.
Yeah.
So this guy came in and he's talking up and down the garage area about that I've been lying about my stuff and that I'm a crook and everything I say is salesman's puffing and blah, blah. And the guy's name was Steve Mignon. He was from Minneapolis. And so I see him coming down the garage there. He's walking between the garages. And I said, hey, come over here a minute. So he comes over and he goes, yeah, what can I do for you? I said, man, you're talking some bad stuff about me in the garage area. And he goes, well, that's what I think. I said, well, I'm going to tell you something. You've got a fire suit that you're going to introduce here. Is that correct? And he goes, yeah. I said, why don't we do something? He goes, what? I said, let's go across the street at 6 o'clock when practice is over, and we're going to do a burn-off. He said, what? I said, we're going to do a burn-off. And he goes, what the hell's a burn-off? I said, I'm going to sit in one chair, and you're going to sit in another. We'll get somebody to pour a gallon of gasoline on both of us, and they'll light a match. And whoever says uncle first loses. And he says, you're nuts. I said, well, you didn't have to be talking that way about me to not know that I was crazy. Because I had a kind of a reputation for being a little wild. Anyway, I go across the street at 6 o'clock, and there's about 700-800 people in the parking lot. And I told Tom Shedden, who at that time was the president of Curator Industries, and he worked in my workroom just as like a vacation from Curator. And I said to Tom, I said, what the hell are we going to do? That guy ain't here.
Wow.
He said, you're going to light yourself on fire. I said, oh, okay. So I get in the chair, and Ganassi says, I'm going to light the match, Chip Ganassi. I said, well, throw it at my feet, okay, Chip? He goes, yeah, okay. So now I'm sitting in this chair. Tom pours a gallon of Mobil 1 on me, and I'm looking at Chip, and he's looking right here. And I'm thinking, please don't do that. Well, he lights this wood match and throws it, and it like blew up. It almost blew me out of the chair.
Jeez.
And I sat there and burned until it burned out, you know. But that was a hell of a day, I can tell you that. It was more than I bargained for.
Oh,
but
wow.
That's the fire suit back there.
And
know?
it's cool. People flock to that thing. They love looking at it and hearing the story. All of our docents who take people on tours around the museum, that is one of the sure stops. They love talking about it. Now,
I like that.
was that the only time you lit yourself on fire?
Oh, no, I've done it many times. But the last time I did it was I made a commercial for Mazda.
Oh, yeah. I think I've seen that one.
Okay, and then I had dinner the night before with the director and the producer. And then the guy says to me, tell me about racing car drivers. I said, what do you want to know about them? Well, are they superstitious? I said, some guys are, some guys aren't, you know. So then he says, how about you? I said, no, I'm in the middle of all that. Okay, so the next day we started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they set me on fire 12 times.
Wow.
So the dude says, one more. I said, wait a minute. Have you ever been on the 13th floor of any building? And he goes, well, no. I said, well, we ain't going to burn me a 13th time.
It's not a good number.
I'm done.
Oh, that's
yeah,
funny.
but I don't do that no more.
Oh, wow. That's something else. Yeah, the whole idea of lighting yourself on fire. Did it actually work after that? Did it change people's opinions of how good the equipment was?
We went from about 200 employees to 400 employees within 2 years
That's unbelievable.
from that. Yeah.
Wow. Unbelievable. Did you ever have a hard time balancing your passion and work, or were they always the same thing? I know Bill used to always talk about that when you're doing what you love, you never work another day in your life.
Well, I didn't work no more. I mean, I still like what I'm doing. I'm not involved with the automobile racing anymore, other than I'm a consultant on some things. I'm making football helmets for kids.
That's great.
Which is just as much fun, and it's just in the same period as auto racing was back in the 50s versus today.
That's wonderful.
So we're having a pretty good time with that.
Yeah, well, that's definitely an area. I know I talk to my wife all the time about what my kids are allowed to play as far as sports. And football's usually not a part of that conversation because of that. But
unfortunately, that's true, but it's with good reason. The equipment that they're using today, other than if they're using SG, they're okay.
Yeah.
We got 16,000 kids in central Indiana with basically no concussions.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. And the other side of the coin, with my competitors, technology has never changed, so they still have a pretty high concussion rate. But it'll change.
Wow.
Nothing changes in a day. I've surely learned that.
Yeah, that's for sure. You're a guy that I've found out quickly that you're someone always thinking about the future. And what do you think is in store for the automotive hobby, both racing and hot rodding? Do you think the people are going to continue?
Yeah, I mean, that's BS that people say, well, the kids don't like that.
Yeah,
that's
I
not
agree.
true.
Yeah.
That's somebody's perception, and they've started talking that way. And I think that what I've seen over the years is it goes in cycles.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And right now it's at a down cycle because of all the electronic games and things that these kids
They're
have.
kind of the flavor of the month right now.
That's what I believe.
I agree.
That history may prove me wrong, but all these little kids want to come get fitted up for football helmets. I have a lot of photographs and stuff of racing in my offices, and whoa, what is that? If they're doing that, that means that they got an interest.
Absolutely. And I don't know, people at home, you can probably tell the museum's open today. We have people in the background wandering through, and
that's good.
And it's wonderful. And you'll hear kids, and so that, to me, that's the future. And if you can create that spark. So if you're out there, kids, go take something apart. I know for you, it's probably the same for me. The first time you hear your first engine come to life, I mean, that's a life-changing experience.
I wish I could remember that.
It's just one of those moments that I think you always remember, and I can't imagine a world where that's not a part of our culture. So yeah, it's wonderful. So after being here again, does anything stick out in your mind at the museum as a favorite? Well, it just
keeps getting better, I mean, I was just looking at the intake manifold wall for flatheads, and I'm going, holy mackerel, man. I can't even imagine that many engines.
And to think all the people that put time and energy into that, creating the patterns, and casting the metal.
Mighty, like this. I don't know. This is maybe my 6th or 7th time. We came up here, I think, 3 years ago, right before Billy died, and was myself and Ganassi and Chip's dad, and Tony George that owns the Speedway. And Mike Hall that runs Chip Ganassi Racing, and it's like every time you come here, there's something new, and it's the place is even that much better, So it just dazzles the hell out of me. How's that?
That's great. I think that's a wonderful final thought. This has been a real wonderful moment for me, and I know for a lot of the other people here at the museum too, because as you come into the museum world as an employee, you think it's all the stuff that's going to be so important to you, and you're going to be able to be around the engines and the cars that you really appreciate. But it's actually the people you get to meet that you really that's the best part.
You got it.
I just love it.
I mean, absolutely, positively. You're looking at history, and there's a lot of people that are still alive that remember all of this stuff, and those people have their own stories.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
it's wonderful. It's wonderful. That's all I can say. How's that?
That's perfect. Bill, thanks so much.
Okay,
this has been a real treasure having you here.
Thank you.
And to everyone at home, thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoy when we get together and we can talk to cool people like Bill Simpson, and we'll be back again. Until next time, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll see you again soon.